Hello, I'm That Casual Gaming Guy, and welcome to the first episode of Delta Bay. Step 1, we're going to do the road layout. We're going to do the freeway connection, the main avenue that runs through the city, or at least this section of the city, and then we'll work on the road layout for the first suburb. I decided to start off with that I would keep the original square that the game gives you to play with. Now, usually without mods and all that stuff, you only get a total of 9 of these city squares to expand your city into. But in a little bit, after I get this first, a little bit going, I'm going to unlock all 81 tiles. Just so we have the room to do whatever we need to. I wanted something different for the bridge for the main avenue going across the river here into our first suburb. And I believe what I decided on is really nice, especially that it splits it so that it's, it's supposed to be, I'm pretty sure, an avenue and then like a 1-lane or railroad tracks next to it. But I decided to use it as the road and then walkways going across the smaller bridge, a bike path and a pedestrian path. And I thought that was pretty cool. Now this episode is meant to be kind of a testing episode, I guess you could call it, a tester for this series. It depends on how many views I get in comparison to some of my other gaming series and stuff like that. So your feedback for this one for sure is definitely appreciated. I decided to put in a train station early on, just so I would have it where I wanted it. Now where I'm placing it right now, unfortunately, it does not work. It does not work there at all. So I delete everything and move it over to the other side of the overpass, which actually works out a lot better. Alright, now that we've got the tracks all figured out, I'm going to go ahead and place a pedestrian path along the edge of the suburb, the first suburb here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get into the road layout. One of the things that I didn't do with this first suburb, at least initially, was use the roundabout tool to create the ends of these courts. And I don't know why I didn't think of it, but I started to do the second suburb later on, which I actually lay out the roads off camera and realized that I had that tool. Why am I not using it? So I did go back, I believe, and fixed it. Alrighty, now that we have most of the layout for our roads and all that done, we're going to move on to step 2, just the basics, where we place our utilities, our police, our fire, our health, the residential and commercial buildings, as well as our public transportation, which the first public transportation we're going to be using is a bus line. A lot of the stuff that I am placing within this area is optional. One of the things that I did, just to kind of go more on the side of realism, is I put a parking garage next to the power plant. Place for the staff members to park. Definitely not needed. It is also a workshop asset. There actually are no parking garages or parking lots that are vanilla within the game, which a lot of people are requesting if there should ever be a City Skylines 2, which has been hinted at. Also, things like the helicopter stations, I guess you could call them, for fire, police, and hospital. And then a lot of the disaster relief buildings, the main headquarters, and all the warning things like the deep space satellite antenna thingy. So technical, right? Don't you love the terminology? You know, the radio broadcasting tower and earthquake sensors and yada yada, as well as a shelter for this area. And I try to put shelters in the suburb, and I did with our first suburb. I have to go back later and in the second suburb put in the evacuation shelters. Also in this area are the recycling centers. I did put one in Cinderary, and then the post office and the postal sorting station warehouse thingy. So yeah, and so that's this area, and then I leave the peninsula free and clear, because what I'm going to do is that's where we'll start our industry, and it'll connect over to the suburb. I think what I'll do is like a bridge, and then I'll have an overpass going over like the train tracks, I think, and heading towards that area by the train station. to connect it, so that way it's not going through the residential area to get to the industrial and stuff like that. So one of the things that I struggled with at first when picking the style of housing for the suburbs was that I had never really done this before. Usually when playing, I just do the vanilla residential zones or commercial zones or industrial zones, and just let the game do its magic. But I went ahead and I put in the Find It mod, and I'm now learning how to use it. Realizing that I could pick out the size of the lot, etc., helped a lot. The one issue that I'm having is some of these curves. I'm not able to place buildings on. Yet, if I were to do the vanilla zoning, buildings would grow there. So I don't know why it wouldn't let me plop down my own. But such is life. So I make do, and I think it turns out really good. A little basic, yes, but that's okay because, I mean, yes, I've been playing this for years. It feels almost like decades, but I know it hasn't been out that long. One of the first newer generation games that I got, and I used to play all the other Cities games too. Cities XL, I don't think they're made by the same people. And they may not be the same series, but you'd think it would be, with both having the name Cities as their main part of the title. But I also, used to do SimCity up until the most recent, which was a total disaster. EA totally dropped the ball on that. But everybody by now knows that one. Man, was that just... Whew. Anyways, that's what turned me on to Cities Skylines, was the just complete disaster of the latest SimCity. And it's so much better, especially with some of these mods. Like, one of the things that really turned me on to this was the fact that you could do curved roads, when you couldn't really in most of the SimCities. You couldn't curve the roads. You couldn't do there's the follow button. There's also the curve button, but the follow button is what you see me use most of the time to create these more S-curves and stuff like that, instead of just a 90-degree angle or 45 or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, so that's what made me fall in love with this. Alrighty, so now it looks like we're putting in some commercial here in the neighborhood. One of the things that I really did, I downloaded a lot of these assets. Oh man, a lot of them are King Leno. And what I'm going to do here, I won't have it on right away when this airs because I haven't had the time to compile everything that I've used. But I will create a collection on the workshop, and it'll have all the assets that I use. Like the roads are custom. At least the main avenue I used with the 4-lane with the bike lanes. Those are all custom. And stuff in the Walgreens and the Bevmo and stuff like that are well known, at least here in the States, companies that, the licensing, I'm pretty sure that Paradox does not have the licensing for it. Those were done by content creators and stuff. So I will have that link as soon as I can, at least for sure by the next video. So if anybody watching notices any of their stuff being used, go ahead and leave a comment and stuff, and let us know that it was you that made that. And I will definitely be putting together, like I said, a workshop, a collection. That's what it's called. So yeah. Alrighty, so now we're going to work on our public transportation. Now, I do apologize. This part of the video is a little irritating on the eyes with the flashing blue, the hair. So I apologize. It's hard for even me to watch. But yeah, so now we're going to put in our first bus line. And one of the things that I realized was that I didn't like it going all the way to the end of the road to turn around. So I decided to make these little bus lane roundabouts. And I had a little bit of an issue at first creating them. And stuff because I had it put onto one lane, which, you know, most roundabouts should be. But I figured it out, got it working, and I think it looks rather well and actually winds up being a kind of, at least that one by the train station there, kind of like a hub for bus stops into the suburb that will be placed over there. I decided to do 2 lines, and I'm not exactly sure why, because most of them have the same stops, but you know, at least the third line is separate. It connects to the train station, but stays in the other suburb, so you can transfer to one of the other lines and come over to the power plant area. One of my favorite mods is the traffic manager. You can restrict what kind of cars can go where. You can change the path of the lanes. It's just awesome. You know, totally control the intersections. There's so many things you can do. The speed limit, etc. It is one of the best mods, I feel, to help with the realism. Because the traffic AI in this game is not the best. Alrighty, so here we are, step 3. Just keep adding more. We're going to place more residential, commercial, and industry, as needed, as well as all the utilities and stuff. So basically, what you want to look at when placing utilities like police, fire, and hospital is to look at your coverage when you're placing it. You know, it'll have, the roads will turn green to what's covered. One of the things that I run into later is with education. And I don't know why. It could be my road layout. I don't know. But it's not really connecting as it should be. Because I've had larger areas than this previously, and one elementary school would work, you know, for more than half of it, and now it's being really interesting. Alright, so we went ahead and placed our first park down as well, using the park district tool. We laid out the area, and then I placed some of the park buildings, and I wanted it just to be a simple park, you know, nothing too fancy. And so just minimalistic, and then fill it with trees. Lots and lots of trees. Now I can go back in later and add stuff like the picnic tables and maybe some food trucks and stuff like that. We do have a cafe in there. So yeah, now this first start here of the suburb, I wanted very, very similar style housing. Granted, I was just looking at the roofs, really, as you can, you know, it's pretty much a top-down game. But yeah, I just, you know, I wanted the bigger kind of houses and stuff to start with, to make it a little bit more nicer than the suburb on the other side of the tracks. And then I start using some of the smaller stuff just because of spacing and stuff like that. So yeah. Alrighty, so that's pretty much the suburb there. And one of the things that I had an issue with was this pedestrian path that I decided I wanted to run along the river's edge here. It just was not working with how the cliffs were created afterwards. So it's all an elevated path now, which is fine. It's totally fine. I mean, I would love to walk along that. One of the things that I'm hoping to do later is to add some stuff down at the river, maybe a riverside restaurant or something like that. And yeah, they do have those things where it's, like a pier and stuff like that. It's just trying to get it to work properly with what we have. So yeah. So one thing that I knew that I wanted to do right here, since I did have that suburb, is to put a freeway entrance and exit down in this section of the square. Alrighty, so it is time to put in our bus line through this neighborhood. And one of the things that I do later on off camera is change up the bus stops within that roundabout that I was talking about. It created kind of a traffic situation where it got really, really backed up, and it still gets backed up with different, having, I think there's 3 different stops within that roundabout, and I even moved one to the opposite side. But yeah, so I think one of the things I'm going to have to do is lessen the number of buses. Alrighty, so here we are at the end of the video. What I'm going to do next is leave you guys with a couple of cinematics. I am That Casual Gaming Guy. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.